In this day and age, we are fastly approaching the apex of the fourth industrial revolution. Within this new way of doing business, a new way of working, a more modernized, technologically enabled world, we see a lot of shifts happening in our minds and our constructs of how we view a business and an organization. But this has not always been the case. During the last 250 odd years of modern industrialized revolutions, we see that even the metaphors that we ascribe to an organization vastly evolved over a period of time. When I think back about at least the first and the second industrial revolution, and to some extent the third one, the industrialized environment, the organization was a very cold, clinical, mechanical machine. We started building huge factories, and we started treating the people in exactly the same way as though we treated the machines. People was reduced to merely become a resource, a human resource. If the resource performed well, we honored them and we praised them, and we most probably paid them something of a bonus. When the person didn't do the job, like a defaultive part of a machine, we take them out, give them a bit of TLC, but ultimately we know that any resource becomes obsolete. What we've seen in the last couple of decades is that there's a shift in the mindset of many leaders where we no longer want to think about people merely as a resource, but we're hearing terminologies such as human capital or human assets, where we start viewing our people as truly part of the wealth of our organization. In a sense, the cold clinical machine is busy being redefined as a warm, breathing organism. We see a lot of biological terminology entering into the space. For instance, we talk about organizational health, organizational purpose, organizational resilience and agility, organizational culture, organizational values, organizational spirituality, etc., etc. All of these terms are actually biological. They are human-related concepts, and yet we are asking questions about how do we create an organizational space that is more human-orientated than just a machine where I am a piece of tool, an instrument that is all of a sudden part of this. You see, in the modern day organization, we get many different models still in existence. When we start talking about succession or a dynasty, we need to understand that this concept is most probably not relevant for every organizational environment. Let me relate to just a few from the reference of Frederic Laloux in his recent publications on reinventing organization. One of the older models that we find is that which he calls the alpha organization or the wolfpack organization. This is, for instance, when you think about a mafia gang or a tribal militia. There is one man of power for the hour. And when we talk about succession, the only thing that we're really looking for is an individual who again will be the strongest individual, the one with most power, just to move into that space and continue leading that gangster organization or then a kind of business. When we talk about that, it's all based on power. But there was an evolution to a kind of organization where loyalty became the main metaphor. We see this, for instance, within most military environments or in national governments or traditional denominational churches. The focus shifts from the man of power to a place where you understand your rank, you understand where you fit it into this machine, and in the end, it was all based on your skill set that needs to find expression. When I speak to organizations such as these, true concepts of succession is not that relevant. Rather, within my potential pool of successors, I'm only looking for the person that has the mature skill set to move into that new job appointment. The difference between promotion and recruitment is actually exactly the same. Yet for some weird reason, when we suddenly talk about it now being senior management or the executive ranks, we just call it succession. Is it truly succession? Or is it just a reappointment based on skill? Well, from the loyalist company, we see most of our modern businesses, big corporates around the globe. These are driven not just by a sense of loyalty, but really having the competitive advantage to make sure that we maximize our shareholder profit. The big machine must run with a perfect hum, well-oiled, well-structured to deliver the results. Again, within these contexts, when we think about the next generation of leader, all we're actually asking for is who is the individual, perhaps internal or from the outside world, that's going to make sure that we remain in the competitive advantage that we have. Can we get a larger chunk of the pie? Can we drive the bottom line even stronger? Can we grow the margins? And that's why we see in most of these big corporates that the senior executive leader are men and women that comes through the disciplines of understanding the financial management side above them all. But there are new organizations as we started to explore. Organizations with a more human-centric focus. Organizations that are more an organism than just all of these machine types. And it's within these organizational constructs that the concept of true succession all of a sudden takes on a whole new dynamic. It's within these organizations that we fully realize and acknowledge the fact that when we talk about an executive leader, whether it's a CEO or another C-suite individual or a managing director or a non-executive director, yes, skill and knowledge is absolutely critical. Without the right skill and knowledge, a person is basically incompetent. Yet just to appoint a person with the right skill and knowledge doesn't mean that the legacy, that true succession has in fact taken place. There are much deeper levels of what it means to be human, of what it means to carry over that legacy from one generation to the next that we must respond to. It's within the context of these organizations that we are considering what can we learn perhaps from ancient dynasties throughout the world. There are so many different models of these. When I think about the Japanese dynasty, the Yokoma family, it's close to 1,000 years that this dynasty has existed and still today. When we think, for instance, still staying with the Far East, the Khan dynasty and how one generation of Mongolian ruler and later incorporated the Chinese world was handed over. In France, we had the Bourbon dynasty. We had the Romanov dynasty within the context of Russia. We perhaps have the Tudor or the Windsor dynasties within the British community. Every one of these dynasties can teach us many different lessons. However, for the purpose of this series and the consideration that I'm busy doing at this point in time, the one dynasty that has always fascinated me is the Jewish dynasty, the Davidic dynasty, of what we learn from a people that is most probably close to about 3,500 years. And yet today, the Jewish nation still exists, geographically, but also across the globe. The question that I've been asking for the last 15 to 20 years is, what do we learn from these people? How do they ensure that we not only find a person with the right skill set, but we truly ensure that the legacy, the immortality of what it means when father hands over to son, mother to daughter, leader to the next successor, remain in place? That is the question that I've been grappling with. And I want to invite you today to also start grappling with this question within the context of your organizational dynasty.